Hi guys, it's Matt from Tea Angle, and today I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to brew better tea, so stick around. So today my 3 tips for brewing better tea is really based around the traditional Chinese Gong-fu way of brewing tea. Now the word Gong-fu means to do something that takes time and skill to complete. And if you've ever been to a traditional Chinese tea ceremony, or if you've gone to a Chinese tea house and kind of sat down and had a tea session there, it all looks pretty complicated. They've got all these brewing vessels, all these tools and equipment, big fancy tea tables. However, if you strip it right back to its bare basics, the whole concept of Gong-fu style of brewing tea really comes down to 3 things, and that is more leaves, quick steeps, multiple infusions. Now, before I go into too much detail, I just want to preface it all by saying that I'm assuming that you're brewing with high quality pure tea leaves here. If you're brewing with tea bags or you're brewing flavored tea, either it's flavored with some artificial flavorings or essential oils or that kind of stuff, then these tips may not apply. So now that you have yourself some high quality tea leaves, here are a couple of things that you can try. So number 1, using more leaves. So generally when I'm brewing tea, I like to use a greater leaf to water ratio. Typically I would be brewing with something like this, a little gaiwan such as this, which holds roughly around about 80 ml of water. But in this I use 5 grams of tea, which is roughly around about this much here. If you're looking at an oolong tea, for example, it's around about this much. Don't worry too much about trying to get exactly 5 grams or anything like that. Like a small handful like this into the gaiwan. So that's what I mean by like a greater leaf to water ratio. As you can see, these little gaiwans don't hold very much. However, I'm using quite a lot of leaves in there. So that's one thing that you should try, more leaves when brewing your tea. Tip number 2 is quick steeps. Now normally when you're looking at brewing parameters for different teas, people will be recommending that you kind of steep it for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, anywhere up to like 6 minutes. And what I'm recommending you try today is go for a really quick steep. And when I say quick steep, I mean really quick, like anywhere between 5 to 20 seconds. Let's look at this Duckpoop Dancong as an example. The Duckpoop Dancong, it's known for its really nice floral and aromatic qualities. However, like a lot of Dancong, it also, within it, also has this kind of bitterness as well, that if you're not careful and you steep it for too long, you kind of bring too much of that out and it sort of overpowers a lot of the natural fragrance and aroma that's within this tea. So when we're brewing this tea, steep it for around about 5 to 6 seconds. So literally it's pour the water in, leave it in there a couple of seconds, and then pretty much straight out. And what you'll get is still, because you're using more leaves and really quick steeps, what you're really getting is you're getting a lot of that aroma, that aromatic character, that floral character, but you haven't quite hit those deep lower notes, that deep bitterness just yet. But however, it all depends on what kind of tea that you're brewing. So for example, in the Dancong, because as I said, it does have that deep kind of that bitterness within it, you want to steep it really quick. However, say for example something like this white tea here, this white peony. Okay, because it's a very light tea and has barely any bitterness in it, you can steep it for a little bit longer and it'll still maintain a lot of its freshness and that floral quality that a good white peony is known for. So once again, using greater leaf to water ratio, lots of leaves in here. That's still, although that looks really packed, that's still 5 grams because the white peony leaves are lighter than the Dancong. Just a little bit of trivia there in case you're kind of wondering, you're thinking that I'm using more than 5 grams here. With this particular tea, it's a fairly light kind of tea. It's got really nice kind of floral flavours, but a surprising amount of depth and a very long lingering finish as well. Very refreshing, really nice on a spring or summer's day. Tip number 3 is multiple infusions. Now, you didn't think I was just going to recommend that you drink one single infusion from this little vessel here whilst using more leaves, did you? Of course not, don't be silly. Now, because you're using high quality tea leaves, which have a lot of flavour, a lot of depth in them, and you're using more leaves and you're using quick steeps, you get to enjoy one single batch of tea leaves over multiple infusions. And the great thing about that is it's got a lot of depth and character in them, and each infusion really serves to highlight a particular characteristic of that tea. So, as I was mentioning before, with the Duckpoop Dancong, it's got a really nice floral, very aromatic character to it. So the first couple of infusions, you're really going to get that. You really get that nice floral, aromatic kind of quality. And then as you go along with subsequent infusions, as you keep steeping and re-steeping those teas, you're going to bring out more of those deeper notes, more of that slight bitterness, that oolong taste that a dancong or an oolong tea is really known for. So those come out between infusion 5 and infusion 8. Thereabouts, you're going to get more of that bitterness coming through. So the tea actually gets stronger as you brew it. This is for the dancong in particular. And then after that, that bitterness starts tapering off on your subsequent infusions once you get past 8, until it slowly kind of fades away as you keep going on. The great thing about enjoying tea this way is that you get to not only enjoy it over multiple infusions, but the flavour also develops as it goes. So you really get to explore what a particular tea, like all the characteristics of a particular tea, instead of trying to cram it all into one pot or one infusion. So to enjoy the tea over multiple infusions, it does mean that you are going to need constant access to hot or boiling water. Now, if you're at work, if you're in one of those kind of office buildings or kind of corporate environment, most likely in the kitchen there's one of those hot water tanks or hot water boilers installed on the wall, or something that's installed on the tap that kind of gives you instant hot or boiling water. Those are pretty awesome. I definitely recommend that you use that. You probably just need something like a teapot or a jug, hold that hot water, and then every time that kind of cools down, or it's getting a bit too cold, you can go into the kitchen and sort of refill it. Failing that, I mean, you could always invest in something like this, one of these temperature control kettles. These are also pretty awesome as well, especially as you can control the temperature, or once it cools down, you can kind of reheat it to a particular temperature, or sort of keep the water at a certain temperature. So these are really awesome. They're not too expensive either. But otherwise, failing that, you can always invest in something like a vacuum flask or a kind of vacuum jug, one of these thermos kind of things. These are pretty good as well. They're pretty handy. I mean, once you boil your water, you pop them in there. They last you for at least a couple of hours, keeping the water hot or warm. We've used these at various markets and events when we didn't have access to any power, serve and sample our teas in the traditional Gong-fu way. And we find that they work pretty well as well. So speaking of water, I know what a lot of you tea nerds out there are thinking. What about the water temperature? What temperature did I brew the dancong at? Or what temperature did I brew the white tea at? It's true, water temperature does matter. I mean, if you hit a green tea with boiling water, the chances of it growing astringent can be pretty high. However, that being said, we find that if you follow the 3 tips that I've outlined in this video, it's actually a little bit more forgiving than you think. I have brewed green tea using slightly higher temperatures, like 85, 90 degree water, and it actually has turned out pretty well. It is pretty forgiving because you're only steeping it fairly quickly. The water doesn't have actually enough time to really stew or scorch the tea leaves themselves. However, that being said, I'll give you a bonus tip in regards to water temperature. So with water temperature, if you're brewing it this way and you're following these 3 tips for oolongs and for black teas, and also for pu'er as well, anywhere from kind of boiling to just a little bit under boiling will work pretty well. I probably recommend that once you've boiled your water, maybe leave it for about 30 seconds or so, let it cool down just a little bit before you start brewing your tea using the methods that I've outlined in this video. And for green tea and white tea, you may want to just wait just a little bit longer. I'd say wait at least 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes just to let it really sort of cool down, and then after that, brew to your heart's content. Don't worry about trying to measure your temperatures, getting it right down to the down to the degree, or measuring out your tea leaves down to the grams. So for this video, I really wanted to keep it fairly simple. Didn't want to overwhelm you guys with a lot of information, a lot of parameters, a lot of technical details. I just really wanted to give you 3 really quick tips to get started, with a bonus tip for water. Just really want to give you 3 quick tips to get started, and then it's up to you to kind of experiment, kind of play around with those parameters, because everyone's taste is a little bit different. Your taste is going to be different from mine. I might like my tea a certain way, and you're definitely going to like your tea your way as well. There's no right or wrong. just different. And through the process of experimentation, you're going to find where that sweet spot is. Now, one question that I get asked fairly often is, do I have to use a gaiwan or some other kind of special Chinese tea vessel in order to brew tea this way? And the answer is, of course you don't. You can use whatever teapot that you want. Standard teapots like this, I've used before. I just put the leaves in, as long as you're using a greater leaf to water ratio. So I'm not filling the teapot up all the way. If I'm using 5 grams, I might be only filling it up like a quarter of the way, or just making sure it just covers the leaves, and that's it. And you're doing quick steeps. You might want to steep it just for a little bit longer if you're using a little bit more water here, but quick steeps, not the 3 to 4 minutes that you're used to. Anywhere between, as I said, 5, 10, 20 seconds should be enough, and then multiple infusions as well. So the only thing that you need to remember when you're using one of these teapots is you do need to tip out the tea into another vessel. So whether you have a big cup or another teapot, you just tip it all out once you've finished steeping it. Otherwise, if you leave the tea in there, it's just going to keep infusing, and you'll be 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes, and then you'll be left with a kind of oversteeped, potentially bitter mess. So that's the only thing that you need to remember is if you're using a teapot and you're applying these tips, you do need to tip out the tea into another vessel. Anyway, that's all for today, guys. I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, please click that like button and subscribe to our channel. Hope to bring you guys more content in the future. But until then, see you guys next time. Bye for now.